Hello everybody and welcome back to World of Tanks, and welcome today to another tank review. And today we are doing the Object 780. Now I've probably missed the hype train on this thing. This tank, for anybody who doesn't know, was available. I can't actually think off the top of my head what the event was called. Was it the Armory or something like that? I can't remember. And basically Wargaming went, well, if you wake up at a ridiculous time in the morning, which I did, but accidentally, and I want to clarify that, like, I didn't intend to get up early in the morning. I was just awake, and I went, oh, well, I may as well jump on my computer. But if you woke up at a certain time in the morning, you could get this tank, and you could dump a load of resources into it, and if you did it in a certain amount of time, you got this skin that had a like, special number on it, and that number is, like, was your tank. I got 14,590, which is quite nice, and I was only 18 minutes like after it got released. So pretty much all of the there was 15,000 like skins, and then I think there was 35,000 tanks after that, and all of the skinned ones, so all 15,000 sold out within the first 20 minutes, which is kind of nuts. The rest sold out, I think, over the rest of that day, which was Thursday. And yeah, that takes us to where we are now. So, how did you get hold of this tank? Basically, you had to dump a load of resources. Wargaming just went, you can spend anything you like on this tank. Free XP, blueprints, gold, credits, etc, etc. You can spend what you want, but you have to give us a lot of it to get it. For me, everybody was like, oh, well, why do I have to dump all of my resources to get this tank? For people like me, it was actually pretty perfect, because I've unlocked every single tank in the game. So for me at the minute, one tanks is literally things like free XP, other than basically credits and gold, and obviously to a certain extent bonds, but free XP especially, I just have loads of it all the time because I don't really have anything to spend it on. Every now and again I'll buy back a tank that doesn't have a top gun or something, but it's not huge for me, so I have loads of free XP, so I just dump majority free XP on this tank. I managed to get it, which is quite nice, but a lot of people did like dump a load of credits. That my least recommended was credits. I dumped mostly free XP, a little bit of gold, and then I think a few thousand bonds, not a huge amount, and some blueprints and stuff as well. But again, for me, it was no biggie, and I actually kind of liked the way it worked, because it meant I got rid of a load of stuff that I didn't need, and I got a tier 10 tank out of it, which is kind of nice. So we're already like halfway into the game, and I've only just stopped waffling about how you get the tank, even though you can't get it anymore, because that's what kind of YouTuber I am, telling you the shit you don't need to know. What is this tank all about? Well, it is a Russian tier 10 heavy reward tank. It's, in my opinion, fairly well balanced. Now, some of you may hate me for saying that and be like, well, it's a Russian tier 10 reward tank, Max. How the hell can it be well balanced? That doesn't exist. In my opinion, it actually is. Like, the gun is, I would say, decent to good. The armor is very much average, and the mobility is also very much average. The gun is a 130mm cannon. It has 530 average damage, so quite a weird alpha for a Russian tank. The majority of Russian tanks with 130s have 490 alpha. And the only real other thing that's close is the SU-130 PM, which has 520. So 530 is quite nice. You do outtrade a lot of tanks. The DPM isn't amazing, but it's not complete trash. It's like 2,300 base, which obviously after rammers and stuff, you can get up to like 2.5. I can't remember exactly what mine is. I'll have to wait until the end of the video when we go into the garage to check that out. But the reload is really not that bad at all. Penetration on the standard rounds really nice, 267. 1,130 meters per second shell velocity, and I'm, hashtag gold noob, so I fire gold, which is 311 millimeters penetration with 1,480 meters per second, which is really, really, really nice. AP rounds, really high standard pen for a tier 10 heavy, like really high standard pen for a tier 10 heavy. The APCR rounds, 311 APCR is actually more towards the lower end of pen for tier 10 heavies in terms of gold rounds, so that's one of the balancing factors. If this thing had heat rounds, like 340 heat, or maybe even with the 130mm gun, maybe 350 heat, I think it would be, you know, these are the kind of things that would make this tank more towards the overpowered. However, even though it is a big gun, don't for one second think that makes it a derpy gun. It is actually a relatively nice gun in terms of gun handling, in terms of accuracy and aim time. So base, these are the base numbers. 0.35 dispersion, so accuracy is genuinely not too bad. He says that as he whiffs a shell that I really don't think should have missed. Dispersions are really quite nice, down at 0.17 when moving and turning the tank, and 0.08 when turning the turret, so really nice. And also, this thing's aim time is absolutely insane at 1.9 seconds base, which obviously, after everything, you can bring that down. If you want to build into aim time, you could probably get it down to maybe 1.6, maybe even 1.5 seconds. But I will show you my build towards the end of the video in terms of equipment, setup, and everything like that. And yeah, this tank just, overall, it is a very good tank, which obviously, like, that's kind of what scared everyone when they were talking about putting this tank in game. It scared the shit out of everyone, because everyone was like, oh god, Wargaming are advertising it as a good all-round Russian, Russian reward heavy, and everyone was like, oh no. Good all-round only means one thing. We're all in the shit. But it's actually genuinely not, like, really not OP. Mobility, as you saw, isn't insane. 45 kilometers an hour forwards, 15 backwards, which is kind of limiting at times. The armor, I will come on to the armor in a separate part of the video, but is both good and bad. Like, it's definitely got its weaknesses. And yeah, it's just an overall, it's a solid tank, but it's not OP, which is really nice and really refreshing from Wargaming to put something like this in and not have something like the 279, which is obviously a bit more, how should we say, a bit more overpowered. So we'll jump into Tanks GG real quick. I'll go through the stats of the vehicle. We'll go through the armor. That's a big one on this tank, going through the armor. I'll then jump into the garage. I'll do the equipment setup and field mods, and then at the end of the video, I will show the post-game stats for this game. So yeah, let's jump into Tanks GG. So, here we go, guys. Nice and quickly, I've also chucked in the Object 277 and the WZ-111-5A, both with 130mm guns, and I'm pretty sure most of you watching this video will have played at least one of these two tanks, or if not, know a decent amount about them, just so you've got a side-by-side comparison. DPM, as we see straight off the bat, is actually the lowest of the three. But you do have that higher alpha of 530 over 490. Penetration on the standard rounds is the highest, but as I said before, the penetration on the heat rounds is the lowest. On the 277, you get 340 heat, same as on the 5A, whereas this, you get that 311 APCR. Obviously, that does mean the shell velocity is a lot higher, which is a lot nicer for sniping, but you do have the downside that APCR is not as high pen. I couldn't think what I was trying to say there. Ammo capacity is decent at 33. You know, you've got enough rounds to be able to shoot through most things. The HE is alright on this tank, 65 pen I believe, and 640 average damage, so that's okay. Like, not the worst HE, not the best. I probably would only recommend using it for like FVs and stuff. I will point out, and I'll get to this when we get actually into game, this tank, the crew layout is really weird, so yeah, I'll talk through that a bit later on. This is where we come to probably one of the specialities of this tank. The gun handling is insane. Like, 1.9 seconds aim time, as I said, is just so much better than both other tanks in this comparison, and 0.35 dispersion as well. Just means you can kind of snipe in this vehicle, which is very nice. Dispersions are fairly similar, but really, like, decent. 7 degrees gun depression as well, so you actually have the same gun depression as the 5.8, which is very nice, much better than the 277. Now, this is where this tank falls back down again. So this is why this thing, I feel, is fairly balanced. Because in comparison to the 277, you've got, you know, worse pen. And I would say worse DPM. But you've got higher alpha and better, like, gun stats. Like, gun depression and handling. Sorry, I really can't speak today. And you've got... Then you move on to mobility, and it is slightly worse. And then you move on to armor, and arguably is slightly better. So, yeah, mobility, 45 kilometers an hour forwards, slowest. Only 15 in reverse, which is the same. Horsepower per ton is actually decent at 17.5, which is very nice. But you obviously reach that top speed, and you kind of then stop. Whereas these guys keep going and end up going past you. Terrain resistances as well do equal that power to weight out slightly. They are slightly worse. The mobility of this tank isn't amazing. It is also a lighter tank than the 277, so, you know, maybe try don't get rammed. Turret traverse and tank traverse are actually pretty decent, 30 and 34 respectively. Armor, I'll come on to in a second. 2,200 HP, exact same as the 277 and the 5A, so you can really see what kind of subclass of tanks Wargaming was trying to put this thing into. It very much does heavily compare with the 277 and 5A. And also something that I think a lot of people underestimate about this tank, 410 meters of base view range, which is very, very nice, which means even not building into view range, which I don't think you would for any reason in this tank, you still have really nice view range, and you can really you're really able to spot things like outspot some medium tanks and stuff, and accidentally spot things as well, and accidentally pick up bits of spotting just because you have such big view range. Moving on to the armor then. Now, this is where this tank gets interesting, because looking at it initially, it's like, oh god, look at this hull, like, it's going to be all over the shop, you're going to be bouncing left, right, and center, look at the angle on that bad boy. But actually, it's really not. If we load in with just the standard AP on this tank, so this is against 267 AP rounds, straight away, even in a full frontal engagement, you can see just level ground, you can see there are weak spots. The lower plate is a 50-50. Obviously, if you're a lower tank and a little bit below him, it then really opens up and becomes green. So if this tank, you're below him, or he's like peeking over a ridge, you can quite comfortably just shoot him in the lower plate, and it is going to go through. It's 145 millimeters thick, obviously at an extreme angle from the front, but it does go through. And then as soon as he starts to angle his tank up and the lower plate becomes impenetrable, that's when the upper plate becomes kind of relevant to shoot as well. Only 100 millimeters of armor on the upper plate, but again, it is because it is angled so much. Like, it's really angled very extremely, but as soon as you start to make it a non-auto bounce, that's when it becomes pennable by pretty much everything. And then even if you ignore the hull, you still have two cupolas on this tank. You've got the left-hand cupola, which is very, very small, like flat on, you are going to have to get lucky to hit it. But this middle cupola, which obviously if he's pointing his gun at you, you have to be able to see it, is actually relatively easily pennable and quite a nice weak spot. You need a little bit of skill to hit it, but it's not completely impossible like a Kramvang's cupola or something like that. So frontal armor is good frontal armor, and if you're wiggling and moving and all stuff like that, it's actually really quite nice and really quite difficult to hit. However, it has got weak spots, which is nice for balance of the game. When it comes to side scraping, basically this thing can't, because you do have these, some people call them shoulders or cheeks, that as soon as you start to angle more than, say, this, you do start to weaken this plate quite a considerable amount. And then if we go through to the hashtag gold noobs, I say hashtag gold noob, that's me, in this tank, let's say you're fighting a 5A who is firing the heat rounds, you're going to notice that things all of a sudden start going very green. The cheeks of this tank, I've been penned several times by people who know about like the kind of cheeks of the turret. If you're in a tier 10 and you've got gold loaded, you can just shoot this thing in the front of the turret and it will go through. Even an IS-7 APCR is 50-50 to go through the front of the tank here. And again, it exacerbates things massively. Like I say, if you do try to side scrape in this tank and someone is firing heat, they are just going to go straight through these cheek areas. From the side, you're pretty crap as well. So the armor can work, definitely. But at the same time, it is definitely not invulnerable. It's not something like a 279. Not that the 279 is invulnerable, but it's got a lot more weak spots. And if you just know where to shoot this thing, you really can massively cause it problems. 7 degrees of gun depression, obviously, you can use it slightly, angle your upper plate, but still, you do get the shots through the turret. So especially against tier 10 TDs, I've noticed, like E3s, E4s, Jagdpans and stuff like that, 2684s, they just go through the front of your turret. They don't really care. I have had a couple of shots as well. If we load AP, this deck armor just here is 30mm thick. I have had a couple of shots where people have shot the bottom of the mantlet and it's kind of shot trapped in here, ricocheted off here and gone down into the deck. I don't know if that's a viable option. I have been trying it, like testing it a little bit. Haven't really had a huge amount of success, but I would just say be careful of that. I don't know if that's something that people have actually managed to do. But anyway, that's enough of me talking about the armor model. Let's go jump into the game, and I will let you know what setups I think are good to have on these on this tank in regards to equipment and field mods. Right, moving on to crew skills, guys. I'll do this very quickly because, like I say, this is a reward tank, so you can put IS-4, 277, IS-7, 705A, or ST2 crew in this tank. It doesn't actually fit with any of them. It's a 3 crew tank, which is awkward, to say the least. Like, your commander and your gunner are loaders, and I don't think there's any other tank where the commander or the gunner are a loader, which means that you're instantly, like, struggling with crew skills. So basically what I did was just put my 705A crew in, because they are the highest trained, and just kind of left it at that, to be honest. So ideally you'd want intuition, but to get intuition you have to train it on both, to get it up to, like, full firepower, fully operational battle station. So, yeah, which means you have to sacrifice another tank. If you've got one of the tier 10 Russian heavies that you don't really enjoy playing that much and want to basically use the crew, or use a standalone crew for this tank, you can do. It is kind of tempting to use a standalone crew, but obviously I'd want like a 5 or 6 skill crew, especially as it being a 3-member crew, so I'd take a lot of crew books and a lot of crew training to get it there, so I'm just going to use this for now. Moving on to the equipment. This tank is actually a tank that you want to be a config gamer on. I think it's one of the biggest things that this tank has already got a reputation for, is catching fire, and I think a lot of people use modified config on this tank. I use it in the survivability slot, which obviously increases the effect of it. Outside of that, rammer and vert stabs for me. You can drop vert stabs actually, because the aim time is so low. Mine's at 1.7, and that's with a little bit taken off it for one of the field mods, which we'll come on to in a second. 0.3 dispersion as well, and up to 2.8k DPM, which is nice. I have got bond rammer and bond vert stabs. Other things I would recommend: vents. You could definitely drop vert stabs for vents. You could also, if you wanted to be a redline gamer, you could drop and use aiming if you really wanted to. I don't know why you'd want to, but you know, you could if you're so inclined. Could use turbo as well, just to increase the top speed rather than the power to weight. That is definitely an option. Hardening as well is definitely an option. You could go config and hardening. Config hardening rammer, turbo config rammer. There are quite a lot of options on this tank. This is, like I say, the setup I'm going for at the minute. Options you could have: if you wanted to drop rations, you could possibly then mount an auto fire extinguisher and then drop config for hardening. I'm possibly, when I get up to like 100% firefighting, possibly gonna think about dropping config, but that I'll have to test that, see if I catch fire. If I don't that much, or if I do and it doesn't burn for that much, I'll possibly consider either dropping config for hardening or vent, so it is probably going to be my option. Or I might go rammer, vents, hardening, and drop the vert stabs as well. I'm honestly not sure. I'm still kind of testing it out a bit. But this is definitely a good setup. This is a good basic setup for the vehicle. I've done fairly well in the vehicle. Well, fairly decently in the vehicle. 3.5k DPG, which is a little low for me, for what I want, sorry, but is relatively, like, it's okay, it's definitely decent. Ideally I'd like 4, but don't think that's going to happen. I'm not consistent enough for that. But yeah, so that's what I recommend for those. In terms of field mods, I haven't quite got there yet. I always recommend the left hand of the first 2 field mods, maintaining speed when crossing terrain. I then always recommend the aim circle size, definitely on this tank, because it hardly affects the aim time because it is so good. Then you're going to want to go for view range. My view range in this tank is sitting at, that's concealment max, 476, and obviously I don't really build into it that much. Like, I haven't got optics. That is a mad view range to have on a heavy tank without optics. That's really, really nice. On the next one, probably going to go top speed. The traverse speed is okay, so if you drop that, sorry, other one, you drop that, it's still not awful. And you still got 1.88 seconds aim time, and you go 49, which is obviously a lot nicer. And then possibly not either of the last 2 field mods. Hit points are obviously nice, but your dispersions are already good, so either of the last 2, whichever you really fancy. And yeah, that is all she wrote for the Object 780. I will just jump into the post-game stats of the gameplay nice and quickly. But if you don't want to watch that, then, you know, have fun. Make sure you do go drop the video a like. Make sure you are subscribed, and make sure you've got notifications turned on. And yeah, I will jump over into the post-game stats. So, nice and quickly, guys. Sorry, I won't keep you much longer. 5,552 damage, 1,500 assisted, and 3 kills. Quite honestly, I was surprised this was an ace. I think I did 7k in it earlier, like in an earlier game, and didn't get it. So, I don't know if it dropped down. This tank went through a very fast curve on release. Like, when it was very first released, it felt really powerful because nobody knew where to shoot it. And obviously then all the marks and everything went up for the first day. And then on the second day, because there's so many of them out, so many people learned where to shoot them. And honestly, it dropped right back down. And like, you notice the armor start really not working on this thing at all. But anyway, 1,249 base XP was enough for the ace. 16 shells fired, 13 hit, 11 penned. You do not make bonus credits, so you do lose a lot of credits. We blocked quite a lot with our armor. You do block a shot or two every game with your armor, because people are aiming at the lower plate, hit the upper plate. You're not quite angled enough and they hit your side or something like that. Like, you do block damage, which is kind of nice. So 2,350 block this game, 1,500 assisted as well in well, just over 6.5 minutes is definitely not too shabby. So I hope you have enjoyed this video, guys. I hope you have found it informative in any way. And yeah, on that, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe, like, notifications. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.